Kyle's had coffee today. Welcome, everybody, to the Stone Down Sports Podcast. My name is Matt. Happy to be here with you. As always, I'm joined by the Brothers of Destruction here, Kyle and Ramey. We've got a great show on tap for you today. Going to talk a little football, the AFC West. But I'll let Ramey finish filling you in on all that. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Hope you're having a nice week. We're going to hit up the AFC West, do our divisional preview. I've really enjoyed these so far, being able to dig into them division by division, and we'll do our regular pick sixer, our top comedians of all time, and we'll do our back in the day replay as well as anything else we may stumble upon. So, how you doing, Kyle?
Right, pretty good. A little hyped up. Had some coffee, so I'm can't sit still. So prepare for a lot of movement on my end, I guess.
Yeah. AFC West. It's a video podcast.
That's true. Yeah, so everybody can see me shake like Michael J. Fox. I did. That was good. I actually do like Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future movies, and some others. Secret of My Success is a good one I like. So I should. AFC West, Kansas City Chiefs. I think we all can agree that is the team to beat in that division. I see them winning it again for the 7th year in a row. Again this season. I don't see any other, unless Pat Mahomes gets hurt for the year, then they're going to win it. What do you guys think?
That was a dynamite transition.
Yeah.
From apologizing to Michael J. Fox and his family to, I think the Chiefs are going to win the AFC West.
Hey, that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
I've got that part out. But anyway.
I agree with you on the Chiefs winning the division. I think as long as they have Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce, they're going to be the team to beat in that division. The Chargers are making a little bit of a run with Justin Herbert, but I do think Kansas City continues to be the team to beat. And like you said, unless there's some kind of catastrophic injury, I don't see any reason why they're not going to repeat again.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And if you think back to when we were talking about some bets we liked and didn't like, one of the bets I didn't like was the Chiefs to win the division just because they were such a heavy favorite. You hit the nail on the head. Barring catastrophic injury to Patrick Mahomes, the division is theirs to lose. Right now, the Chargers they're capped as a team, and part of that is on the shoulders of their coach, Brandon Staley. But we can talk a little bit more about that later.
Well, yeah, sure. Or we could just roll into the division preview and start with the Chiefs.
I thought
we already had.
Oh, well, you said we could talk about a lot about that later. I was
Brandon Staley coaches the Chargers, though.
Chargers. Yeah. Okay.
The Chiefs.
Chiefs. Yeah. I think offensively they're set. Matt leans back. I think defensively is their questions. Their offensive line's top 5 ranked. They got Pat Mahomes. They got Kelce. Kadarius Toney, is he the wide receiver 1 there?
I mean, he might be the wide receiver.
Kelce's the top receiver, but is he actually the position wide receiver?
Yeah, he might be the wide receiver 1, but he's not the number 1 target of that offense for good reason. We'll see how long that lasts, though, because he has a problem staying on the field.
Yeah, he's only played in 19 of 34 games in his career so far. So
I still feel like that was a pretty good pickup by the Chiefs midseason last year. I think it was a relatively low draft pick that they had to trade to the Giants to get him, and he did end up making an impact the second half of the year. But to your point, I think by default he's the number 1 wide receiver. Kelce's going to be the number 1 target, but
yeah,
it'll be interesting as Patrick Mahomes continues to be one of the highest paid players in the NFL, if he's able to step his game up to kind of make up for the fact that he's taking up so much of the salary cap that some of those pieces that they had in the past, the Mecole Hardmans, Juju Smith-Schuster, that they just aren't able to keep those, and they have to rely on Mahomes to pick up the slack.
Well, and part of that too is going to be on the front office. They're not going to be able to sign those high-priced free agents, so they're going to have to draft very well and very smartly.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think by when they traded Tyreek Hill, I think that was a really smart move. Obviously, it worked out because they won the Super Bowl, but they were able to pick up some additional picks from Miami to supplement that offense. And they've really been focusing on the defense in the draft too. So I think as long as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are there, I think they're going to be the team to beat. Andy Reid is a fantastic coach, and the only thing that he hadn't checked off the list up until a couple of years ago is that Super Bowl win. And now that he's got a couple under his belt, I just think that the sky's the limit with his offensive creativity and the talent that they have between Mahomes, that offensive line, and Kelsey.
Yeah, I don't. And Andy Reid's good. He's a great coach. I think people will see that the enemy was not the mastermind behind. He's not the mastermind behind that offense. He went to Washington, of course. I think it says something. Matt mentioned the front office. I think it says something that they lost Orlando Brown Jr. and Andrew Wiley off the line, and they still put some pieces together, and they're still ranked in the top 5 preseason this year. So
I
think they're doing their part.
Yeah, they picked up Jawan Taylor from Jacksonville to make up for that loss of Orlando Brown. So, it'll be interesting to see how that line, if it's able to gel as well as it did last year. It was kind of amazing that in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, the line was such an issue, and the front office was able to kind of retool it and make it a top 5 offensive line within the span of just an off season.
Yeah. They also signed Drew Tranquill, linebacker from division rival Chargers. He was their total tackle. I think he had the total most tackles on the team last year.
Yeah, he had a really solid year. I mean, last year their defense overall was 17th in DVOA. They do have some nice young pieces in the secondary, though, to build around. Chris Jones is in a contract year. So, this team could look a whole lot different very soon, or they're going to have to find a way to give that man his money. You were talking about the enemy, like Andy Reid calls plays. They brought Matt Nagy back. He's not going to be calling plays either. So, it's a change, but there isn't really a whole lot of it there.
Yeah. They're the team to beat. They got that great game at Week 17 against Cincinnati, like the NFL schedule on that. So, and they're pumping up the rivalry in the offseason with the Jamar Chase and the Pat Who, and Kelsey responding on his podcast about don't disrespect Pat Mahomes. So, I like the offseason chatter.
Yeah, they're putting out some bulletin board material. Their schedule does line up kind of nice, especially at the beginning. 5 of their first 8 opponents missed the playoffs last year. And kind of an odd quirk, they get the Broncos twice in 3 weeks, though. Their win total right now is set at 11.5. I'm going to go over. I think they're a 12 or 13 win team.
I agree. I think that they're going to roll through that division. I mean, the Denver should be better. Las Vegas is probably worse. So the Chargers are going to be there, but I think overall that schedule allows them to get over that win total.
Yeah. I got them at 12-5, winning the division. So it's like we're all thinking about the same. They're the team to beat. Okay, moving along. Let's go ahead and go with the Las Vegas Raiders. I have them finishing 3rd in the division this year, going 7-10. They were late by Week 13. And looking at their schedule, that bye comes at a good time because starting Week 8, through week 12, they have at Lions, home against Giants, home against Jets, at Dolphins, and home against the Chiefs right before that bye. And then right after the bye, they have Vikings, Chargers, at Chiefs right after. So they have a very tough schedule, 8 through 15. Again, I have them winning 7 games. We'll see what happens. I think it's just a gap year, really, with Garoppolo. And you might see a little tanking going on. What do you think?
Tanking and winning 7 games seem contradictory.
They're still losing double-digit games. I mean, maybe they get some heroics there. I don't know.
I think they're a 4 or 5 win team. Yeah, they've got Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if they view him as a bridge quarterback or not, but if he is, like right now, he's a bridge to nowhere. They've got Devontae Adams. He's still a top 5 wide receiver, and they brought in Jacoby Myers from the Pats last year, but him and Hunter Renfrow both play in the slot. So what the hell sense does that make?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Jimmy G is a professional quarterback. He's going to know where his bread is buttered, and that's by throwing the ball to Devontae Adams.
Yep. And you don't even have to do it downfield. He works so good. Just get it out of your hands quick, get to him, let him make somebody miss and get a bunch of yak. Ramey?
Yeah, I think it's going to rely on Jimmy G to simulate or get close to the production that Derek Carr had last year with Devontae Adams. It's interesting because Jimmy G still hasn't passed his physical. His signing bonus was deferred until he can pass the physical before camp, and I believe he had an additional surgery on his foot to have a screw put in. For I think it was like one of his toes that hadn't healed completely. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. And if for some reason he ends up not passing a physical, what do they do? Do they go to Jared Stidham again?
Stidham is gone. Stidham is gone.
Oh, is he?
And that's
that's right. He signed with
I was going to bring that up too.
I think they have Brian Hoyer.
Yeah, that's right.
Obviously knows the system as well from the time in New England, but I was going to bring that up. I think they should have kept Stidham instead of bringing in Hoyer, but what the fuck do I know?
They drafted Aiden O'Connell from Purdue as well, but I mean, that's more of
he's not
third string guy.
I mean, if they end up playing Brian Hoyer, they're going to be starting Caleb Williams next season. So.
Right, exactly. Or Drake May, maybe.
I think it may. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if Josh Jacobs can stay healthy for another year and have as big of a year as he did last year.
Yeah, interesting. Sorry, I just did it. My bad.
It's all right.
Love you, buddy. Continue.
No. It must have been really important, so go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, when I was looking up the stats to kind of do some research on the Raiders, I found this really interesting. Jacobs had 1,653 yards. The next leading rusher was Derek Carr with 102 yards. Like their backups had 85 yards and less. So they completely relied on Jacobs for the running game. I don't think you can do that year in and year out and rely on him to stay healthy. So somebody's going to have to step up.
Is he going to even play this season? Is he going to lay the ballot? He still hasn't went to any OTAs or the mandatory mini camp.
We'll see what happens when training camp comes, because that's when the massive fines kick in.
That's true.
Right now it's a lot of talk and back and forth in the media. You do have a good point. Look what happened to DeMarco Murray. You give these running backs a giant workload, and then they fall
apart. And Darren Waller's not on the team. He was traded to the Giants. I don't even think he's that huge of a loss, just because he wasn't on the field very much, but he was a big target. He was on the field.
But they did draft Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, who I think is going to be a really good tight end in the NFL, both from a blocking perspective and from a pass catching perspective as well.
And they have Austin Hooper and OJ Howard, some vets in there to show Mayer the ropes, hopefully. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that fella can do in the NFL. Raiders, we're good.
Actually, I want to make one more point. I know that Matt is a bigger Patriots fan than you are, Kyle, but you're both kind of a Patriots fan. I hate Josh McDaniels. I think he's a weasel, but that's not the point of this question I'm about to ask you guys.
Is that more from how he was going to be the coach and then had one foot on the door? I mean, he did that so unprofessionally. And I, as a Colts fan, if I was a Colts fan, I would also hate the man until he died too. So
yeah, but that's not what I was trying to get at. So I digress. Yeah. So is he a guy that his ceiling is really good offensive coordinator? Or do you think he can be a successful head coach in the NFL? I know he took the Broncos to the playoffs one year with Tebow, and that was kind of an anomaly, but it just doesn't seem like he's a good NFL head coach.
I don't think he is. He's a hell of an offensive coordinator. There's just something missing with him. Like it, and it's hard to put my finger on. Like, I immediately want to say maturity, but almost like not in a, hey, I act like a kid, but more of like a professional maturity.
Yeah, the way that you would snub a team that you said you were going to go coach.
Well, I mean, that was a long time ago, though. Like, and people, that, I mean, hopefully he's learned since then. I think it's more like the level that you have to operate to be an NFL head coach. You're essentially an executive of a Fortune 500 company. And I don't see that in Josh McDaniels. I think he's a hell of an offensive coordinator. I think he does a great job developing quarterbacks, but he's not somebody I want running the show.
Is he on the hot seat this year?
I think so.
I don't know. Like, maybe. I don't think so. I think if they have another losing season, I think he'll be back next year. If they end up with the top overall pick, that's a different story. Yeah. There's a regime change.
Moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think we can all agree they're, on paper, the second best team in the league behind Kansas City. I have them struggling this year, though. They have a tough schedule. I got them going 9-8, finishing second in the division. They'll get one of the last wild cards.
I don't think 9 wins gets a wild card spot in the AFC.
Yeah, that's true. You might be right. That is more of an NFC thing.
Their total is at 9.5. I think they're a 10-win team. I think they can match what they did last year. They got rid of Lombardi, whose offense had just gotten completely stale, and brought in Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore's offense is going to do a better job of taking advantage of what Justin Herbert does well, which is his athleticism and just rocket for an arm.
That's one of the things I wrote down. Justin Herbert's a stud. And I think last year he got held back a little bit by his coaching, the offensive staff there. And to an extent, Brandon Staley as well. I know that Matt's not the biggest fan of Brandon Staley, but I do think that Lombardi's offense it wasn't catered to what Justin Herbert is best at. And to your point, Matt, it's moving around and then just relying on that rocket of an arm. I think they drafted Quentin Johnson out of TCU with their first round pick. So at least they're supplementing the receiving core a little bit there, because I know that they had some injuries last year with Keenan Allen and then Mike Williams late in the year.
No, he got hurt late in the year. I was shaking my head because him playing in week 18 was inexcusable. And that's when Mike Williams got hurt.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Okay. I thought I was right. And then you show my head and it's like,
I had him on one of my teams, fantasy teams last year.
Yeah. So I completely agree with you. It was inexcusable. He shouldn't have been playing in that game, and they may not have blown that game at Jacksonville had he been playing, and 100% or even close to 100% in that playoff game. So again, coaching, you're up, 28-3, 28-0 against the Jaguars at Jacksonville, and you end up blowing it in the second half.
So it was 27-3.
That's right. 27-3, 28-3 is something else.
Patriots.
Sure is. Sorry, Falcons fans. Sorry.
The one other thing I'll be interested to see with the Chargers is how Austin Eckler's desire to have a long-term contract and probably be paid a little bit more than what he's making now. I know that he negotiated a new deal this year with some incentives, but I wonder how much it'll impact his willingness to try to fight for those extra yards, maybe not go out of bounds when you can pick up some additional yards or try to score. Austin Eckler, I think, I had him on my fantasy team last year, so part of the reason why I'm so invested in him. He's a fantastic player, both from a running and catching perspective out of the backfield. And I don't know if mentally not having that long-term security is going to impact how he plays this year.
Well, I mean, he's made some money, but the contract he's looking for is not out there. Dude is a 28-year-old running back. Now, I understand he doesn't, have the same number of carries as somebody who's been a primary back for the past, we'll call it 6 years. But still, like, that's a beating. He does a good job of staying in shape. He does a good job of minimizing contact. But Father Time is undefeated, especially at the running back position. He is a hell of a running back, though, and they need to bring in somebody to complement him. And they've failed through the draft so far with Kelly and Spiller, who have been duds. They're Jags at best. That might not be a bad landing spot for somebody like Leonard Fournette.
Well, it's funny, while you were talking, it got me to thinking, with Kellen Moore coming on, does Zeke Elliott make sense there?
He could. I think if Zeke signs anywhere, it's going to be in Dallas. But he would make sense. He understands the offense. He's got the relationship with Kellen Moore, but he's probably asking for a bit more than what they want to pay. And he's somebody else who, reality is going to set in very quick for some of these guys, that it's a very different market now for running back.
It definitely is. They're not paid like it's the 90s anymore. So not valued in that respect. I'll switch it. You guys were talking a bit about their offense. I'll talk about defense. They allowed the third most rushing yards in the league last year. But they went out and spent defense. J.C. Jackson, big deal. Sebastian Joseph Day in the middle, big deal. Austin Johnson. And also acquired Khalil Mack from the Bears in a trade. So it'll be interesting to see if that, on paper, it's a much improved group. They lost Drew Tranquil, like I mentioned earlier, to the Chiefs. But I got some talent in there to shore up that rough defense.
Yeah, and Joey Bosa, he's going to be good on the other side with Khalil Mack there. And they've got Derwin James anchoring the secondary, who is, an absolutely superb player.
Yeah, and Herbert's still on his rookie deal. So it makes sense. You have the time or have the money to do this. They just saw their stadium mates win a Super Bowl. They want to win one too.
You mean they're landlords?
Yeah. Locker room mates, kind of. Yeah. I don't know. So they each have their own. Yeah.
Yes. I think with that defense, having Herbert and having some weapons on offense with Eckler and the receivers, the defense doesn't have to be a lockdown defense. You just have to hold teams under 24, 25 points a game and rely on Herbert to score 28. And you're going to win most of your games. The problem is last year, a lot of times they weren't able to do that. And especially in the playoffs, it seems like the defense let them down at some of the worst times.
Yeah, and if you think about how many games come down to something like just one stop, and when your defense can't give that to you, or if your offense is turning the ball over and creating a short field, it all goes hand in hand. They've got a brutal stretch. The middle of the season, they've got 5 of 7 games against the Cowboys, Chiefs, Jets, Lions, and Ravens. And I think how they come out of that stretch is really going to tell the story of how this season goes for them. Their win totals at 1.5, I'm going over. Like I said, I think they're a 10-win team.
Yeah, the schedule is just some little tidbit there, starting week 6 to the end of the season, they alternate home away, home away, home away, home away till the end. I just thought that was kind of interesting. I had never really seen that before in an NFL schedule.
Yeah.
Moving along. Oh, never mind. Ramey?
No, I was just going to say, I think the 9.5 wins is right on. I see them being a 9 or 10 win team. I tend to kind of think that they're going to go over that 9.5 win mark, but it wouldn't shock me to see them at 9 wins or 10 wins, or if things go well, 11 wins.
All right. Final team, Denver Broncos. I have them finishing last in the division at 6-11. Their last 4 out of 6 are on the road, twice against the Chargers and at Detroit and against New England. So how they finish up the season is going to matter, but it looks kind of tough. So what do you guys think?
I don't think they're going to be a very good team at all. Sean Payton is in. That was the big news in the offseason. He brought in Joe Lombardi to run the offense. He's got Vance Joseph there running the defense. It's going to come down a lot to the play of Russell Wilson. Is he going to be hot garbage like he was last year? I don't think so. I think Peyton can coach, and coax a little bit more out of him. But how much? Who knows? He was sacked 55 times last year. Tops in the NFL, tied with Justin Fields.
16 touchdowns, 55 sacks. Can't win games that way. They had 11 losses. 8 of them were by 1 score or less. So with Sean Payton, you think that they'd be able to at least change the outcome of half of those. What's so funny?
They lost 12 games last year.
Shit.
Oh, I was just laughing at the 1 score or less thing. Like, what is less than 1 score? Is that a win?
8 of the team's 12 losses were by a 1 score margin. So I think with Sean Payton being added, they could possibly convert half of those into wins.
I think it comes down to, is Russ Wilson willing to be coached? It seems very apparent from the end of his tenure in Seattle and even into last year that he wants to do what he wants to do. He wants to stand in the pocket and throw a lot. He relied on his legs early in his career. And I think while obviously as you get older, you can't do that as much as you were when you were younger. I think that needs to be a part of his game with bootlegs and just being able to scramble out of the pocket, not necessarily run all the time, but being able to move around within the pocket, and having Sean Payton there is going to help, hopefully, utilize his talents to his best abilities.
Yeah, I mean, you can be mobile and still run to throw, if that makes sense, if you're keeping your eyes downfield as you run. His size comes into play. If you want to be a pocket passer and you're having to look between people instead of being able to look over people, that makes a big difference, because now you're missing a lot of the field. You're only seeing a portion of it. And, as far as support, they've got a couple decent receivers. Jerry Jeudy is pretty good. Cortland Sutton's pretty good, but they don't have anyone elite. The one elite player they had elite-looking player they had on offense tore his ACL, LCL, and PCL. So who knows how an electric running back is going to look coming back from that. I can't imagine he's going to look very good this year. I think next year is really going to be telling in, what kind of comeback he has.
Yeah. Do you think Dalvin Cook makes sense there as a 1-year deal, or would he even want to go there because they don't really have what seems to be an opportunity to make a postseason run?
I think he'd make sense there. I think he would give them a lot of what Melvin Gordon gave them. When he first went there to Denver, not somebody absolutely amazing, but, can do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and isn't really a liability. It'll help provide some veteran leadership there, too, to kind of counteract Russell Wilson's Looney Tunes bullshit, high knees on the plane.
On the way to London.
Right.
Peyton. if anybody can turn that team around, I think it is Sean Payton. He took over New Orleans, and what happened there the first year? I think they were 3-13 that last year under Jim Haslett. He took over and went to a Super Bowl. Now, I'm no way comparing Drew Brees to Russell Wilson. So that's probably your difference. But defensively, I think they'll be pretty good. Brought in Frank Clark. Of course, he's mostly a postseason guy than a regular season guy. Samaje Perine from the Bengals. So he'll be a good threat out of the backfield. We'll see.
I think they signed Sean Payton knowing that he was going to be a long-term fixture in Denver. And I think that the way Russ played last year, it's going to be really important that he shows improvement this year, or I could see them cutting ties with him in the next year or two. I know he recently signed that extension when he was traded, but NFL contracts are made to be cut. And I think after the first 2 years, typically, it's not as, while there would be some dead cap money, I think that they would be able to get out of it. And I could see this being a year where they don't really show a lot of improvement just because of the talent level on the team, especially on offense. But I think that Sean Payton's going to be basically analyzing and kind of looking over the roster to see who could be a fit long-term. Maybe that's Russ Wilson, maybe it's not. But I think this year is kind of a mulligan year for Payton, to where he can see, okay, here's what we need to do long term to be able to move into a position where we're contending with the Chiefs within the division.
Yeah, so Russell Wilson's contract, like this year, he's cheap. It's $22 million. It's next year and the year after, it goes from up to 35.4 and then 55.4. But the out is after 2025. You could get out of it with a $31 million dead cap hit. That's still like, holy shit. I think this year is going to be an evaluation year for them. They're going to play through the season. They're going to see what they have, and there's going to be some changes going into next year. But in order to get to where you want to go, you've got to figure out where you're at first.
Yeah, they got plenty of players. Bowles, Randy Gregory, Simmons, the safety. That none of those guys have guaranteed money next year, so definitely got to be some.
Yeah, cap's just going to keep going up too.
Yeah.
So, I do have a question for you guys. Do you think that Russell Wilson is just that goofy, or does he lack the self-awareness to realize that the shtick he puts on comes off as so disingenuous that he just keeps doing it because he thinks, oh, I need to be the all-American boy, eating my vitamins, saying my prayers, that kind of stuff. Because it just seems like, I don't know if it's because they had such a bad year last year, but continuing to, hey, Broncos country, that's right.
He's just a caricature. He's a caricature of what an NFL quarterback is. It's like a real quarterback went down to a pier and sat down, and then that was what was handed back to him. But then again, on the other hand, like, I want to say, why would anyone actively choose to behave that way? So maybe that is what he is. Like, I'm not a Russ guy. I never have been a Russ guy. No, he's something else. Some kind of experiment.
How smart do the Seahawks look for getting out?
Oh, shit.
When they did.
Well, I mean, Geno having the year that he did kind of helped.
Sure did.
Which is in no way repeatable, and that shit is not going to happen again.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, John Schneider and Pete Carroll, and I know that we're talking about the AFC West, not the NFC West, but with Pete Carroll being in his early 70s, I found it really interesting that they decided to stick with Pete Carroll and John Schneider rather than signing Russell Wilson to a giant contract and basically telling Pete, hey, thanks for the memories, see you later, and bringing in a coach that works well with Russell. So I think it was really smart. I think Pete Carroll's still a really good coach, and has a lot of energy and everything. But I just wanted to touch on how smart the Seahawks look getting the picks, not only not signing Russell Wilson to a giant extension, but getting some picks back for the Broncos as well.
They got damn lucky there. But they made the smart move. Who wants a quarterback that says, you know what, I need an office at the stadium and my teammates need to make an appointment to come talk to me?
All right, let's do our weekly pick sixer. This week, we're going to talk about our top 6 comedians of all time. Kyle, would you like to start us off?
Sure, absolutely. Top 6 comedians. Number 1, no particular order, is Jay Hickman, comedian from the 80s and 90s. Don't know him. He had an album and a joke titled Boat Ride that is hilarious. I won't get into it now, but it is about a guy who takes girls out on his boat to gain sexual favors and how it backfires on him. So check that out. Just Google YouTube Jay Hickman Boat Ride. Fine. Number 2, George Carlin.
Oh my God, I love him. He's so great.
Yes, I expect him to be on everybody's list. If it's not, you're a fucking psychopath. Famous for the 7 words you can't say on television. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. And another quote I love of his is never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. Number 3, Robin Williams. Most of you probably remember him as a great actor, obviously, on Mrs. Doubtfire and others. He started out as a comic. I remember watching the comic relief specials back in the 90s with him and Billy Crystal and Whoopi Goldberg, and that's when I was introduced to Robin Williams. One of his quotes that I like is, "Cocaine is God's way of telling you you have too much fun." Next is number 4, Bernie Mac. I loved him growing up. Great black comedian. One of my favorites his is, "If you don't bust a nut when I bust a nut, you're fresh out of fucking luck." What's so funny, Matt?
Funny joke.
Yes, it is. And then Larry David is number 5 for me. Obviously, creator of Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Started out as a comic, Saturday Night Live, famously for 1 year and quit. And I put a woman on here because I felt like I needed one. Sarah Silverman. I think she's hilarious and not bad on the eyes either. Her little favorite thing on sports that I liked was, "I learned that people in wheelchairs are allowed to have marathons," which seems like cheating to me. But what are you going to say? Matt, top 6 comedians. Up to you.
All right. I actually went with people based on their stand-up comedy. So number 6 for me is David Cross. His album, Shut Up, You Fucking Baby, is my favorite album of his. He's also known for playing Tobias Funke from Arrested Development. Number 5 is Paul Mooney. He was a writer for Richard Pryor. He actually helped Robin Williams break into the business while he was head writer on the Richard Pryor Show. More recently, he's known for his sketches on Chappelle's Show, Ask a Black Dude, and Negro Damas. Number 4, Bill Burr. Kyle, I think I played his Philly rant for you the other day, where he absolutely just roasts a crowd in Philadelphia for 11 minutes back in 2006 and actually counted down during. It was funny as hell.
It was pretty epic.
He's also a creator and writer of the Netflix show F is for Family, and he voices the father. Number 3 for me, George Carlin. You mentioned him earlier, Kyle. He's excellent with observational humor, and especially towards the end of his career, he didn't really tell jokes per se. He more presented the world for how it was. Number 2 for me, Richard Pryor. To me, he's the best comedian ever. He's excellent in stand-up. He had some hilarious movies. Brewster's Millions and Stir Crazy come together, and he and Gene Wilder really had some excellent chemistry on screen. And number 1 for me, since this is favorite, is Mitch Hedberg. Surreal one-liners, had a very unconventional delivery. The dude was just an absolute riot for me. Very, very deadpan in his delivery. To me, he's my favorite to ever do it. Ramey, who's on your list?
Nice. Starting at number 6, I have Lewis Black. I first caught wind of him on The Daily Show on Comedy Central back in the early 2000s when he was on there with Jon Stewart. Actually went and saw him in Carmel here last summertime and really enjoyed the show. He's I can relate, he's a very angry comic.
Yes.
So I vibe with that. Number 5, Don Rickles. I really just enjoy that whole Carson Tonight Show era, and he was always one of my favorites when I would see him come on. And when I see him come on, I mean when I watched the YouTube clips of him coming on. I was 7 years old when Carson retired. So, but Don Rickles is a huge insult comic, just really off-color things, but means it in the best way possible, if that makes sense. So he can kind of get away with just about saying just about anything. So, my number 4, Jerry Seinfeld. This is for you, Kyle. I saw him at IU when I was at IU in the early 2000s and really enjoyed his show. Obviously, the Seinfeld show was a huge hit, but just I've always thought he's a very funny guy, and especially watching comedians in cars getting coffee, it's been interesting to see him have conversations with other comedians and kind of dig into the nuts and bolts of how to write a joke or how to put a set together, that kind of stuff. So just, I mean, incredibly successful, but also very funny. Number 3, George Carlin. I just feel like culturally he was really important. Actually, I'm going to throw number 3 and number 2 together. George Carlin and Richard Pryor are my 3 and 2. So you guys already hit on them, so I'm not going to say too much, but just wanted to also mention that George Carlin was a prominent figure in my youth as the conductor on Thomas the Train Engine. So, yeah. So my number 1 is since, like you said, it's our favorite comedians. My number 1 is Norm Macdonald, another unconventional comic whose delivery and cadence is just something that you don't really hear very often. When you said Mitch Hedberg, Matt, I kind of put them in a similar boat just because like the cadence and the tone and the just the delivery of their jokes are not what you typically hear with a standard comedian, if there is one. Gone way too soon, but just it seemed like a guy that was super, super smart, and a guy that no matter who the comedian was, they respected him because he was always trying to get the joke, get the punchline out, make something funny, and to a point where he would tweet about like golf, like he would live tweet golf, like PGA events, and it was interesting because he reached a level where you're like, is he just fucking with everybody, or is he just being serious right now? So I think the way how creative he was and how different he was puts him at the top of my list.
Those are some good lists. Jerry Seinfeld, I've never really cared for his stand-up. I don't find him particularly funny. Love the show. Just, I don't know. He doesn't really do it for me, I guess. And I like how you brought up the cultural impact of Carlin and Richard Pryor. And that's something that can't really be understated.
Yeah. I kind of went the same route as you, Matt, with sticking with stand-up comedians. But when I came up with Seinfeld, I just felt like because of the show and because of his continued work with comedians in cars getting coffee, that's why he made my list. I find him really entertaining. I agree with you. I think I might be a little too dark for his comedy style to where, I mean, it's typically pretty clean, which is fine. But it can come off as corny sometimes. But I think overall with everything he's been involved in, and don't forget B-Movie, that puts him in my top 5.
I purposely didn't.
I was just say, speaking of dark, I saw both Mitch Hedberg and George Carlin, and both of them died 6 months later.
Yeah. So you don't go see comedians.
I'm the common denominator, obviously. It's a heavy burden for me to bear.
Now it's time for our back in the fucking shit. I know you owed me one, or 3, 4, maybe. Now it's time for our back in the day replay. Where we fucking, I don't even need to explain it. Why am I fucking explaining it? I don't fucking know. Now it's time for our back in the day replay. Matt, what do you have for us this week?
June 26th, 1916, the Cleveland Indians experiment with numbers on jerseys in a game against the Chicago White Sox. It was the first time MLB players identified by numbers corresponding to those on the scorecard. They put the number on the left sleeve. And back then, the players didn't wear numbers on their jerseys. Instead, on the scorecard, their number was printed. But, people would come up to bat and, just by looking, you can't tell who it is. So it didn't really catch on at first. It became pretty much commonplace, I want to say, in like 1946, something like that, just after World War II.
Excellent. Ramey?
Yeah, you guys are going to love this one. 20 years ago this week, LeBron James was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers. I know his impact on basketball is not the reason why I chose this one. It's just how old it makes me feel that he was drafted 20 years ago, because he and I are a month apart as far as age, and to think that he's been in the NBA for 20 years is pretty amazing. So that's why I decided on LeBron James getting drafted number 1 by the Cleveland Cavaliers.
So I guess that means 20 years ago this week, then Darko Milicic was drafted number 2 by the Detroit Pistons in that draft. It's not often you can get a human victory cigar.
Mine is June 27th, 1988. Mike Tyson knocks out Michael Spinks in 91 seconds. At the time, it was Tyson's 16th first-round knockout in 35 professional fights. It is presently the 6th shortest heavyweight fight in title history. Just 10 punches were landed, 8 by Tyson and 2 by Spinks. I did not know this until today. Spinks never boxed again, announced his retirement from the sport a month later. The Tyson fight was the only loss of Michael Spinks' professional career. Mike Tyson went on to prison for rape, came back to bite Vander Holyfield's ear off, and had a great cameo in The Hangover. That about wraps that up.
All right, that'll do it for this week's episode. Thank you to all of our subscribers and those of you watching who aren't subscribers. We really wish you would consider doing that and throwing us a like or a comment. It really helps us out.
It's easy to do. All you got to do is click a button.
Woke up this morning to a comment on the YouTube short I did yesterday. So, yeah, comment. We'll interact with you. Sure.
Sometimes it remember to witty or intelligent.
Right. Remember to check out the website at stone.sportspodcast.com. New episodes out weekly on Tuesdays.
That was an abrupt stop to your statement there.
Like that.
How many W's go in front of Stone Down Sports?
Well, 3 particularly, but I'm not going to say the W's anymore. I have omitted the W's because it's not 1996 anymore. I don't feel like I need the W's. When I'm going to fuck it up and only say it twice.
Are you a WWW guy or a WWW guy?
I'm a WW. I don't say the fucking W.
So thanks for watching. Bye, everybody.